Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Erasing the Stigma. Today, I'm so excited to be here with Gary Rosenzweig from MacMost. Gary makes videos teaching people how to use their Mac and how to access offerings on the Mac that you might not be familiar with. So today, Gary is going to walk us through some options on the Mac that are super helpful for people with dyslexia. So Gary, would you be able to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I make these tutorial videos. For years, I actually wrote computer books, and then after online video became kind of the standard for teaching people about technology, I switched over to that. So I make videos several a week on various different topics, and a lot of times those topics do talk about like the various accessibility features on Mac and different ways for people to use Macs. One of the great things about Mac OS is that usually there are more than one way to do just about anything. So you can, instead of following what somebody else does to accomplish a task, you can maybe find another way to do it that's better for you. So since everybody's different, everybody learns things differently, everybody interacts with computers a little differently. It's often great just to explore all the different ways, even if you think that a way that you're using your Mac now works, there may be a way that's even better, that's even more productive.
Mhm.
So it's good to know about all these different features. So yeah, we could just dive into taking a look at some of these accessibility features.
Yes.
I'll go ahead here and share my screen and we can get going.
And Gary,
Um,
while you're setting up, I just want to touch on what you were saying. Something that is very helpful is knowing these different ways to access things on a Mac, especially when you're working with kids and you have
mhm.
parents. It might be easier for them to do something one way, and for kids, it might be easier to do it another way. So it's good to have those options.
That's definitely true. Yes. And you should see my screen now, I believe.
Yes, yes, we can see it perfectly.
Great. So, I mean, there's, you could break down these different tips into like reading or kind of, consuming content, learning, and writing,
Okay.
creating content. And let's start with some reading things. And one of the things about reading text on the screen, of course, is, you go to these websites and every website's using different fonts and different background colors and all of that. So people's experiences vary. There's one website that has news articles or something, and people can read just fine. And then they go to another one and the text is too small or the font choice just makes it very difficult to consume the content that's there. One of the things you have your Mac do is actually read your text aloud to you. So like a simple way to do that would be to select text. You can select like a whole paragraph or article or just like one line. And then the menu choice is a little like deep down. You have to go to edit, speech, and start speaking. But there's a keyboard shortcut that you can get to if you go into system settings and go to accessibility, where a lot of this stuff is. And you look under spoken content here, you're going to see a lot of things like speak selection, which is exactly what we're about to do. But if you click the information button here, you can see there's a keyboard shortcut, much easier to use the keyboard shortcut. But while you're here, also check out that you could have different things like the word colors, sentence colors, things highlighted as um, things are being read to you, because it's not just about just having it read to you, but watch what happens when I activate this. So I'll use Option Escape, and it will read this sentence to me.
Wombats are short-legged, muscular quadrupedal marsupials of the family Vombatidae.
So you can see how the word
Right.
is highlighted there, so you could follow along. That way you could be doing two things. You could be reading with your eyes and with your ears, right? And you've got these controls here, and you could speed things up, slow them down. You can pause and all of that. And you could just, stop. Uh, and it's so easy to just have, maybe just you just want this one paragraph read, or maybe there's just one sentence that you want read to you. And you can kind of switch back and forth with these things. It's really easy to do. And that's one way you can actually have, things be a little easier. You could also have some other things. If we look here, uh, if we go back to accessibility and we go back to spoken content, there are other things. You can even have speak the item under the pointer. So this is, something you'd probably want to be in a room by yourself, or have headphones on or something. But then you turn this on,
Speak item under the point. Speak selection. Speak announcements.
everything is spoken to you. So that's actually could be really useful because you get used to just hearing the things that are underneath the pointer, but sometimes it's those little things that we have trouble reading, especially a lot of times buttons have really tiny text in them and things like that. So lots of good ways to use that to do it. But if you just want to focus on like the visual stuff, then there's a lot of ways in apps to zoom in on things. So for instance, here I'm using a trackpad. I could just use two fingers on the trackpad and zoom in on the whole page like that. But there's also under view, zoom in and zoom out. You can see the keyboard shortcuts are just Command plus and Command minus. And then Command zero always takes you back to like the 100% level.
Mhm.
You could do that, but a hidden one is if you hold the Option key down, zoom in and zoom out changes to make text bigger, make text smaller. So instead of making the images and like the graphics on the page bigger and everything bigger, just the text gets bigger. So you still kind of keep the design of the web page while making it easier to read things. So that's really useful. And also, of course, you've got a reader view, which is like the ultimate way to be able to read something, whether it's an article like a Wikipedia article or like a news article or anything. You could go in and show reader, Shift Command R, and it changes the page to this, which is fantastic because I know particularly with dyslexia, other learning challenges, you've got some advantages for people with the background colors and the fonts and things. And once you have it like this, you can click here and you could change that background color like
Wow.
that. And you could change to these fonts. And different people may find different fonts and different background colors to just, be much more readable than the default. And once you have it set, you can use Shift Command R to exit and Shift Command R to go back in on any, article or anything that you're reading. And, could really kind of make it so much easier to read any content in Safari in the browser.
Yeah.
So, so yeah, do you have any questions about that or?
No, so this was a great explanation. I do want to pause you there to contextualize a little bit, like you were doing for parents, of how this can be so helpful, starting off with the reading and having the words being highlighted under what it is saying is really helpful because it gives kids, especially, but all people with dyslexia, context of what the word looks like and what the word sounds like. So you're engaging different senses, and multisensory learning through different senses, is something that is extremely beneficial for individuals with dyslexia. Something else that you were touching on through the zooming in or the reader view, where it takes out all of the additional like stuff on the outside and you just have the text, or making the text larger, that is super helpful for individuals with dyslexia, and pointedly because oftentimes dyslexia is a comorbidity for ADHD. So if you have someone with attention issues, getting rid of the additional things that you're not necessarily focusing on is really important for honing in your focus on what you're reading right now rather than being distracted. And then also for people with dyslexia, just seeing the text in a larger way is very helpful because it limits the amount of words that you're going to see. So it's easier to focus on one line and you're not necessarily jumping between the lines, which is super helpful. So all of those tips are very practical tips that you can use whether you're in the classroom and you're working on a laptop. I know that's getting very popular in classrooms, or you're at home for more than just dyslexia, but these other comorbidities that kids with dyslexia might be dealing with.
Yes, and actually, I showed in the speak text how you could change the speed,
Mhm.
and
Right. Yeah.
it's not always the case that slower is better.
Mhm.
Sometimes faster is better. I know somebody who's a college student who has ADHD, and for her, speeding up things like she would watch online videos, and she found that at about 125% or 150% of the speed of the lecture actually got her to lock in and concentrate on what was being talked about. Whereas at normal speed, her mind would drift.
Yes.
So
Yes.
sometimes slower is better, sometimes faster is better.
That is such a great point to bring up, which is also the value of having you here and talking about this, because what you were saying with ADHD, there is a lot of research that the speed is helpful. And so with that, you have a lot of subscription-based things such as like apps or like Chrome extensions that you can download that will speed up the text, and some of these things that you have to buy. So it's really helpful to know that if you have a Mac, these features are built in. So you're not paying for these additional subscriptions. You can access them on what you already have.
Yes, yeah. When you view a video in QuickTime Player on the Mac, there's speed controls, but also on YouTube, if you watch YouTube videos, there are speed controls, even keyboard shortcuts for them. So you could watch YouTube videos at slightly faster than normal speed, or slightly slower than normal speed.
Right.
So yeah, it's up to you. Um, yeah, I wanted to show just a few more visual things too. There are some accessibility features that have been around for a long time. One of them is zoom. So the idea here is, yeah, you can make text bigger, you can like change your screen resolution. But what zoom does is if you turn it on here in accessibility zoom, you can use Option Command 8, and then it gives you this box here, which just zooms in. It's like a magnifying glass on the screen, and it moves with your pointer. So you don't have to move it independently. It's basically magnifying what's under the pointer. And you can adjust with Option Command and plus and minus the zoom level in there. You also have the ability here, I'll turn it off, but you've got the ability to do picture-in-picture style, which was like that magnifying glass, or split the screen. So like one half the screen is zoomed in, while the other half the screen isn't, or even just have the entire screen zoomed in and moving around. And this could be great because a lot of times apps don't have built-in features for like reading the text, making the text larger and things. And this is screen zoom. It's changing the actual screen. So it works for any app on the Mac. So it's a really useful technique to know. And it's so easy to turn on and off once you have the switch here turned on. You just use this keyboard shortcut. And there are tons of people. This is also good for older people that, once we get to the age where we need, reading glasses every once in a while. You could be where 90% of the time you're fine looking at your computer screen, but yeah, 10% of the time it's good just to zoom in a little bit just to get, a focus on something. So there's that, but also there's just display resolution. And one of the things about going to system settings and displays is you've got these display resolutions here. First, you can get a lot more than just these 5 choices by either control clicking, 2-finger click on the trackpad, or right click on the mouse here and change to show list. And then you get this list here of more options. And what happens here is a lot of times you find people online saying, oh, you have to have your Mac set to like the default or to some other amount because it optimizes the GPU or rendering or something like that, which I don't subscribe to because it's not worth making your Mac like 1% more efficient inside if it's just going to be harder for you to see what's on the screen. So I encourage everybody, whatever screen they've got, whether it's a MacBook or like it's an external display on a Mac Mini or something, to try these different display sizes and see what works best for you. And the best one is whatever's best for your eyes, not what somebody somewhere else said is like optimal for, the performance of the hardware or something like that. So always play around with those and don't let somebody else tell you that like you're on the wrong setting or something like that. Because the right setting is whatever looks best for you and helps you read and helps you write and all of that.
Right.
Um, a couple more accessibility things. One cool thing here is this thing called hover text. And hover text, what that does is you turn it on and you use the command key and you got to kind of move the mouse around. Watch what happens when I hold the command key down and I move the mouse here. You could see this text that appears it's not taking the text out of the screen, like the text is still there, but whatever's underneath is actually getting its own little text box. So I could like retext here like this. And the cool thing is that notice in here, I could click on information and I can choose the font for this. I can choose the size. I can even choose background colors and things. So this is a way to keep, like, say, the web page the same as it is for everybody else, but maybe be able to read particular pieces of text using, whatever you prefer. And, again, with those background colors and fonts being so important for people with dyslexia and other things, that could really be a help. And if you don't like, say, Reader View, or you find that the site you go to, Reader View, doesn't work particularly well, hover text could be a really good alternative to it.
Yes,
Um,
I also want to add in the fact that this is a really great alternative for teachers as well. When you're displaying information in the classroom and
yeah,
you find that a font works particularly better for some students, you can have the font stay the same on the web page, but then do the hover text to highlight some things. And when students are reading out loud, they're able to read out loud what's magnified from the hover text, which makes the classroom more accessible.
yeah, that's a great point that I didn't even think of. It's like having the little laser pointer on a screen, but you're actually making the text larger and easier to read at the same time.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Yes.
Cool. Well, I want to move on to some things that can help you with writing. So I want to switch over here to Pages. And like there's a lot of different things that you could do when you're writing. Uh, One of the most obvious ones is predictive text, which works really well now in the latest version of Mac OS. So you could be typing something and you could see how there, I haven't typed the ER and weather yet, but they're there in gray. And I don't need to actually type those letters. I can just go right to a space or a comma or a period or whatever, and it will finish it for me.
Mhm.
And you'll see this happen from time to time. Depends on like how much context there is, because it does get an idea of what it thinks the word's going to be um, uh, based on context. So sometimes it'll be there. Uh, so you can see how think there I could have just done, I could have completed think without having to type the rest of the word. Sometimes it'll actually go a few words um, in advance of you. So you can complete a few words. And then the great thing is, of course, is, you don't have to, it kind of is like spell correction, but before you've actually completed typing the word, which is really useful. And of course, spell correction itself is something that it's been on Macs for a long time. If you go under edit in most apps, you go under edit and spelling and grammar, you can turn on check spelling while typing. And you can also turn on check grammar with spelling, which is very useful is for punctuation as well. So, let's see, the dog, uh, uh, something with like uh, found, and then if you type the wrong it, for instance, um, let's see, it should have corrected that there. Why didn't? Live demos. But yeah, you're going to get like corrections for like simple
A little
punctuation,
underline.
or yeah, you should get the little underline there. And it's not doing it for me right here. Um, so yeah, normally you get red underline for spell a word that's misspelled, and you get green underline for like if you're using the wrong word there based on grammar rules and stuff. So that's really something. Yeah, it's on by default, and it's easy to see, to pick those out. Um, so yeah, there's that. Let's see. Just in general, you have the same idea here in writing as you do in reading, where you want to pick a font that's good for you. And what really works well in an app like Pages, which I know a lot of Mac users use, is you could redefine styles very easily. So if like writing with this font isn't any good, you can select it and let's say, oh, it's going to be better if we use, say, this font, and you can make it bigger as well. And then you can update the style. So this is body text style. And if I update the style, now body text is always going to be this.
Ah,
So as I type, it's going to use that. But I can have, multiple paragraphs of stuff, just type a bunch of random characters there. And if I change one paragraph, like I'll change this one back, say I'm done with my document and now it's time to submit it, it's an assignment or something. I can change it back to a font that I want to submit, and I can update the body text. And you can see the other paragraphs updated as well because I updated body text and they were all body text style. That allows you to create like a huge document in the style that you want to use for writing, and then change the style after you're done. It makes it really easy. In fact, if you change the styles, you can save it as a template. And you can add it to the template chooser. And then the cool thing is now every new document you create in Pages, you can use that template and body text will be that font rather than Times New Roman, for instance. So you can really have it be like, the font that's best for you. You can also, I think a really useful technique that I don't know if people take advantage of is say you're in Mail and you want to compose something in Mail. So you type here and the font's like too small. But if you make it bigger, the problem is even if you remember to change the font back, you're going to forget eventually. Enough emails go by and you're going to start sending email and it's this really big font. And everybody's getting your email that's like a really big font, maybe bolded, maybe even a different color that's easier for you to read while writing. Well, the, the thing I think people should do is leave this alone. Go into Pages, have Pages set up with the font that you like and the size you like, and type what you want in Pages. And then when you're ready to send the email, copy it, go to Mail, and if you paste it in, it will paste with the font that you used in Pages. So you don't do that. Instead, you go to Edit and Paste and Match Style. And there's a keyboard shortcut for that, Option Shift Command V. And then it will ignore the style from Pages and just adopt the style in Mail. So now you send your message in the font that, Mail is saying is, the standard, but you've written it like this. So you can use that for text messaging as well, or any other messaging app. Write it in Pages, copy and paste. You could even have a Pages document, call it like Scratchpad. And that's just where you write text, you copy, and then you paste it into Mail, you paste it into Messages, and then, you clear it out and you're ready to type like your next thing and just go back and forth like that. I think that's really useful for a lot of people to do because writing in these, and sometimes in Mail and in Messages can be a little painful. The fonts are kind of tiny and they're not usually ideal.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I love that we keep coming back to this point that you're doing what's right for you. And then you could transfer it back to the style that's supposed to be what it's traditionally formatted in. And that is something that we are very passionate about here in Color and Confidence. There's not one size that fits all, and you could find what works best for you, but then you could still work in a way that is translating things in the traditional style through what you were talking about. And then I also want to go back real quick to what you were saying about the predictive the predictive spelling and the predictive like filling in a word. And there is some debate amongst parents and teachers of if my student is typing and the word is going to be filled in on the screen, then they're not necessarily learning how to
Mhm.
spell this or what word to put. But I just want to counter the debate with the idea that this is predictive. So it's based on an algorithm and it's based on what you were saying, like context clues. So the more context clues you give it, the better the prediction is going to be. So it's a really great teaching moment if you have something that's appearing and pausing before you press the enter and asking, okay, what context clues to the computer or the reader in this case of why this word should show up? Or when you were typing the example, I think it was weather, you had the ER come together. So that can be a moment of, okay, why do the ER go together as a letter pair? Why not a different letter pair? And so using these tools, and some might call them shortcuts, as these really great teaching moments, because again, the computer is learning and it's learning alongside you. So use these to learn with the computer.
Yes, exactly. And that is exactly what this next feature is about, is something very similar to that, that I think is really useful. And if you go back into accessibility, all right, and we're going to go back into the spoken content here. And one of the things you can do is, you think of spoken content as something somebody else wrote that now you're reading. But you could actually use this for what you're typing. It's called typing feedback. And if you turn this on, there's a whole bunch of different settings here. I've got it set to just echo words. What it's going to do is the computer is going to echo back what you're typing. So you
Uh-huh.
turn this on, and then I go back here to Pages, or I could be in Mail or Messages or whatever, and I type a word,
The,
and it speaks it out there.
quick, brown, fox,
So it's giving you this feedback, very useful because you're getting confirmation that the word that you were thinking in your head is the word that you actually typed and the word that the computer actually got into the app. Um, and it's kind of reinforcing what you're typing and making you listen to it again. So not only is I think it excellent for people with dyslexia and learning challenges of any age, but also even for people without any disabilities like that, and they're writers, and hearing the words back to them actually could be really useful in just getting that sentence just right, or completing the thought and that kind of thing.
That's extremely important. And something that is really important to note, what you were saying is you might have a parent who is adding these features to their Mac for their
Mhm.
child. Even if the parent doesn't have dyslexia, these features are typically really helpful because sometimes all readers might miss a word, or you might think one word is another word and you type it wrong. So to hear things or to get it spoken back to you is super helpful for anyone.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, these tools, I always teach accessibility tools, telling people that these were designed for people who have different challenges, but they can be used by anyone.
Mhm.
Some of these tools are useful for writers. Some of these tools are useful for people that want to be more productive, or want to speed up their reading, or consuming of content. All sorts of uses for all of these tools in here.
Mhm.
Um, and you could, of course, also some big ones are that you could just go beyond typing itself and just go to pure dictation. And a lot of people don't realize on Macs there are actually two different kinds of dictation. And one of those kinds is it's just the basic dictation, and it's actually found in system settings under keyboard. And here you can just turn on dictation and you set a keyboard shortcut. So there's a bunch of different options here. I've got it set to press the control key twice. And this is kind of like you can just turn it on and speak a sentence or two and then turn it off kind of dictation. It's really useful for just about anybody who wants to do a quick message or something like that. Doesn't feel like, typing it out. You can just turn it on. The quick brown fox. And yeah, it's not going to do it because Zoom is capturing our audio. Um, but you turn it on, you turn it off, and oh, and I've got the wrong microphone adjusted. Let's try that again. I will try it now. The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog.
That's amazing.
And then I've just turned it off. Now, a lot of people go and say, well, okay, great, but unfortunately, it doesn't have all these features. Like I can't select a word that got wrong or do things with punctuation and all of that. And what they don't realize is this is like the quick dictation. There's actually a much more involved dictation if you go into accessibility, and it's called voice control. And when you turn on voice control, it does more than dictation. It allows you to control your whole Mac. So the idea is it's designed for people that may not be able to use a keyboard or a mouse or trackpad at all. But it includes in it this full featured dictation. And you can see it here. If you turn it on, you don't have to activate it. You can just start talking. And if you're in an app like Pages, it starts, taking the words and putting them into the document. But if you look under commands here for this, there are all these different commands you can use. And a lot of them at the beginning are things like, launching apps, quitting apps, that kind of thing. But if you go down further, you get to all of these dictation commands. So you can do things, for instance, like text selection. Like you could say, select the previous word, or, select the previous line. And you can do things like move up, move down, you move the cursor around. You can make changes like replace something with something else. So you could, speak something and it gets the wrong word. And you can, instead of having to use the keyboard to go back and make the change, you can say replace wrong word with right word, and it goes back and does it. And does all these advanced things. And this goes back to what you were talking about at the beginning, is a lot of people know about these features, but they think you have to purchase something, get some sort of expensive software add-on. And actually, this kind of dictation is built in to Mac OS. And if you go through this list, it's really long, all the things that you could do, like deleting a word, that kind of thing. Um, it's a lot to take in. There's a big learning curve here, but you don't have to do it all at once. You can just use basic dictation, learn that you could delete a word or change a word, and then maybe the next day learn that there's, other things. You could do selections. You could say things like put curly quotes around that, that kind of thing, and slowly build up your own vocabulary of what dictation can do with voice control, which is really pretty advanced and works really well.
Mhm. That voice control, I mean, is so comprehensive. And you gave us such a good reminder that you are providing such wonderful tips. And for someone who might be watching this, while it's super exciting, it can be overwhelming. But we do recognize the fact that, first of all, you might not need all of these tips at once. They might be situational. And second off, you don't have to use them all at once. You can experiment with what works best for you. Because again, like we were talking about the whole episode, something that works best for one person might not be what works best for you. So it's kind of like a trial and error experimentation.
Exactly. Exactly. It's experimentation is so important for like every level of using computers in all sorts of different ways. I always encourage people not only to experiment and play around, but don't wait till you need something to actually play around with it. Like, don't think, oh, I'll try voice control the next time I have to write a document. Find some spare time and just, oh, I'm going to use voice control and I'm just going to write a short story, just something just for fun. But in doing that, I'll learn how to use a little bit of voice control so that when I do have like a report due or something like that, then I know a little bit and I'm not starting from scratch right now when I have something really important to work on.
Right. Yes. And especially for kids, it can be made into some kind of a game for voice control. When kids are on the computer, you can say, hey, let's try to do this computer game that you really like, but navigate only using voice control. And so you're integrating that the child normally does with this new skill that they can experiment with in a comfortable and safe setting.
Sure, just write an email to a family member,
Yeah.
but try to do it with voice control instead of the keyboard, that kind of thing. And yeah, it could be a great way to learn it bit by bit. And Apple's made all this stuff to be pretty intuitive. So once you start using it, like you saw all those commands there, it was an overwhelming list of commands. But once you start using some of them, you start to think like those commands and you start to predict like, oh, I bet you there's a way for me to do this. And I bet you I say this. And then sometimes you're right. Like you start to pick it up without having to learn it, one by one.
Exactly. Yes.
Mhm. So yeah, I just have a few more that go back to what we were talking about before about like colors and things on the screen. Not all of these are things you can see when you're demonstrating over Zoom, unfortunately, but at least I can show you the controls. Like for instance, under appearance in system settings, there's accent color. An accent color, like if you look here to the left of system settings, you can see how there's a blue highlight under appearance. You could also see this blue for these buttons and checkboxes and stuff. You can actually switch to different colors for that. And this is particularly useful because if you choose the first one, this little multicolor wheel, then some apps will have their own special one. Like for instance, the Notes app uses this light yellow that a lot of people complain about is so light that it's hard for them to see. But if you switch to say purple for everything, then all of the apps give up their kind of, own special color and will follow this color here. And if you find one works really well for you, you can just say, I just want the accent color throughout all the apps to be purple. And you also have a highlight color too, which is for selecting text. And you can customize that. So if you find that, oh, some apps use yellow and orange and it doesn't work for me, you can say, I want highlight colors to always be green or always be blue. And that could be really useful for, across all sorts of different apps. You also have, basic appearance, light and dark mode, right? You've got a lot of people have it set to auto and have it go to dark mode in the evening, but you don't have to do that. You can use dark mode all the time or light mode all the time if one is better for you. So you've got that switch here. You've also got some accessibility settings for the colors on the screen. So if we go, let's see, this is under display here, go into display, and you've got some things you can invert all the colors on your screen, which is probably the original accessibility feature that goes back like 20, 30 years on the Mac, the ability to do that. But you can also do things like increase the contrast and reduce transparency. And when you do that, it changes the screen to look like this, um, which some people like the whole aesthetic of, but also the higher contrast really can be like a complete transformation of how things look and make it much easier to read things. You've also got here that you can change text size for different apps. So there's some apps like reminders and calendar that the text size is a little too small. You've got the ability to customize those and set a default text size for other apps. You also have these ways to change the whole screen with these color filters. So the idea here is you can turn color filters on, and then you can have your whole screen be grayscale, which is easier for some people to read and see elements. But you can also go with a color tint and then set a tint and tint the entire screen different colors, which I know is a key thing for people with dyslexia to be able to sometimes just tinting the screen is enough to really help for reading and writing.
Mm. Those, I mean, those are such amazing tips. I, for one, did not know half of that, if anything. And all of those tips, like you were saying, are so incredibly helpful for kids with dyslexia, kids with comorbidity,
Mm.
ADHD, and then also in general for anyone. These tips are things that are accessible, but they're also things that are universal. And that makes it great for using in the classroom for teachers. You don't have to single out one student who might have a disability because you can make these tools used as a general classroom toolbox and everyone
Yep.
for them, especially a kid with a disability.
Yep, that's exactly true. And I have one last bonus one for you,
Oh,
which
go
is
for it.
it is one of the most interesting ones because it's not visual at all.
Okay.
Yet it does help people to be able to read and write. So it's under accessibility, under audio. You've got this section called background sounds. And you can choose a background sound. Now, this is kind of like white noise or things like that. You've got a few noise ones here. You've got ones like ocean sounds, rain, stream, nighttime fire, and all of that. This is built into your Mac. This is, again, kind of thing where people know it's there, but usually they think you have to get it napped or something to do it. And by having this like background noise on that could, help kind of keep out like noises around you. I live in the middle of the city, for instance, so there's always noise coming through my window, no matter what, no matter how much I've got it closed and all. Having this on, having AirPods or any headphones in, and having this background sound on has a great effect of just basically helping anybody concentrate more. And sometimes just upping your concentration level a notch or two with a background sound like this can really help with things like reading and writing, even though it's not a visual change that you're seeing.
Yes, no, that is so helpful. And my mind keeps jumping to a classroom setting. A teacher might not want a child to be going onto YouTube and searching up like background noise or
Hmm.
Spotify. So to have this automatically on your app or on your Mac when you don't have to go into those additional browsers is so helpful. And there's so many research like studies coming out on the effects of white noise, and there's brown noise, and there's all these different types that are super helpful for maintaining concentration, again, for dyslexia, ADHD, the comorbidities, but just in general for anyone.
Yep.
Yeah, so Gary, I want to thank you so much because, again, like I said, I personally know that I did not know half of these things, and everything that you showed is so incredibly helpful. And you're not only providing us with tips, you're allowing us to save a lot of money because we don't have to get these extra subscriptions to do things that are already on the Mac. So for everyone, I want you to know that Gary has his channel MacMost, which is going to be in the bio of this YouTube video. And MacMost has many more tips just in general for helping you navigate your Mac. And a lot of these tips, like we were saying, can be extremely helpful for those with dyslexia. So thank you so much for coming on to Erasing the Stigma today, Gary.
Well, thank you for having me.